Hello everybody, welcome to a new series for Use the Fours. This is Custom Creations. I'll be taking a look at factions off of the Custom Factions Wiki. If you're not familiar with that, it's a place with over 300 as of now custom factions made by a whole ton of people in the Smash Up Discord server. All very high quality. I think it's worth checking them out. And again, this series is just going to be given a summary of one custom faction per episode, starting off with a very popular faction on the wiki, one of the older ones too, is Brewers by Onassi. Now, Brewers have a very straightforward concept, which is that they want to brew the perfect deck. And they facilitate this by returning cards to the box. This is, if you're not familiar, something that was introduced in Oops, You Did It Again with the Vikings, and reiterated in 10th anniversary with the Bride Titan for the Mad Scientists. You remove cards from play for the rest of the game, and those cards are then inaccessible. And Brewers are all about doing this, and then they have tons and tons of recursion to reset their deck so that those cards that you've removed from the game are no longer part of your deck. You can see on this slide here, we've got an image of their leader, their boss minion, the Brewmaster. Captures both parts of that pretty well. His on-play ability resets your deck, shuffles your whole discard pile in if you want. And on top of that, he can search your deck for a standard action, play it, then place it back in the box. So he gets some of those cards in the box that you're not going to need later, but you want to play now. And we're going to see that many of Brewer's cards have abilities when they are boxed, so you might be even getting more than you would normally get out of playing that card because you're placing it in the box. Now, because of this, Brewers have a very interesting profile as far as strength over the course of the game. They tend to be on their own much stronger at the start of the game before they've used some of their cards, because their cards can definitionally only be used once sometimes, as we'll see, and then they tend to fall off later and they need their partner to pick up some of the slack. So we're going to start by going through all of their cards, and we're going to talk about some of the roles that the cards play within their strategy, as well as how they fit together. And this first cohort of cards we're looking at is the way that Brewers blocks their cards. This is, I think, most of, if not all of the, well, other than the leader, which we saw last slide, this is, I believe, all of the ways for Brewers to box their cards. And as we can see with the Engibeer and the Yeast Beast, these are very support-oriented abilities. We're boxing cards in order to have card access. Engibeer is drawing cards, Yeast Beast is directly searching for them. And it can be a big, tough decision to figure out what to box sometimes, because you only have so many cards in your hand, right? But the idea here is that we're aiming for quality of cards over quantity of cards. And of course, like I said earlier, there are cards that have abilities when they're boxed. Perfect Pour and Homebrew reiterate this idea of card access and card quality. Perfect Pour, we're getting rid of cards we've already used from our discard pile in order to have a big burst of power that has 2 copies. So it is what we would call a double feature action. But Homebrew only has 1, very similar to something like a Cosmic Knowledge from the Ultimates, where you're getting rid of the cards you don't want now in order to draw through your deck. Again, more card access. Again, a very big theme with Brewers is that they're brewing the perfect deck. They're getting the cards you want at the cost of other cards right now. And you can't get those cards back. Again, if they're in the box, you cannot get them back. So now let's take a look at the cards that want to be boxed. These are abilities which, again, only usable once. And as a result, they are pretty good. You can see Hops in particular on the right side of the slide there, moving 3 of your minions, and they each get +1 power. That breaks bases on its own if you have the minion quantity out. The fact that you can only use it once is part of what helps justify it. Even if you wanted to, if you could get your cards back with recursion, which this faction has plenty of, cards that you place in the box are gone. So you can only do that mass movement once. You can only do the base swap with Tavern Tussle once. You can only do the big power burst with Cheers once. You can only do the free draw with Gang's Here once. Gang's Here also has 2 copies. The rest of these have 1. Gang's Here also plays into that resetting your deck to kind of complete the brewing process. you're resetting your deck so you've crafted your set of perfect cards for the situation. And again, because these are cards that want to be boxed, they're usually going to be your targets with the cards we saw on the previous slide. And so they are going to be your primary targets. As you thin them out, you're going to have fewer Brewers cards in your deck, and probably you're going to get rid of some of your partner's cards along the way. Then when you reset with Gangs All Here, maybe you can box that afterward with like a Perfect Pour. After you reset, you're going to be left with mostly your partner's cards. But before we get into more of that, let's look at their last few cards, which I think are their payoff cards. We can see a common thread with all of these is that they scale to the number of cards boxed. Cunning Snail is a breakpoint reduction for every 2 cards boxed. Taste Tester, which is their recruit, it's got 4 copies despite the 1 power, wants plus 1 power for every 4 cards. And then their capstone card, I believe, Fine Wine, wants you to just box everything you can, and you get 1 VP for every 12 cards boxed. These cards are sending a very clear through line that you want to box as many cards as you possibly can, and you will get stronger over the course of the game as you do so. Despite the fact that you've used a lot of your powerful cards, Brewers will still have things that they can do, some high impact cards that they can cash in to get value out of. Alright, so now that we've been over their cards and some basics of their strategy, we can go a little more in depth. Like I've been saying, they want to burn through their good cards early. And this is not just their own cards. Because of how much recursion they have, they're heavily incentivized to use all of the cards that they draw. If you draw your King Rex and your Rampage, don't be afraid to hold them, play them for a 14 burst break a base early on. You will get that stuff back, and it will be easy to get it back once you do. The second point of their strategy is you throw away what you don't need, so you're using your good cards, and the cards you don't use, you throw away to fuel your Engineers, fuel your Yeast Beasts, or maybe they'll have abilities that you can use to fuel your bursts as well. That third step, the reset, you create a deck with Gangs All Here or the Brewmaster. So once you have thrown away your bad cards, you reset your deck, you should be left with nothing but your good cards. And then you play those good cards again. And like I've been saying, often this will be coming from your other faction. You're not going to throw away King Rex and Rampage. You're going to get them back. And once you've reset your deck will be very thin, hopefully. And so it'll be very easy to draw those cards again. So that's the idea with Brewers. They give you very strong card access with their mid-tier minions and some of their actions. They let you throw away cards that you don't need. If you draw cards that you don't like, they can still have use. You can use them to get to your other cards more quickly. They also have tons and tons of recursion. So if you have good cards, you use them, then you get them back, and then you can play them repeatedly. And I think this squarely categorizes Brewers as a support faction that brings good cards of its own, because they have that very, very strong access, and they do have good cards. None of the cards are bad, but those powerful cards can only be used once because of the boxing mechanic. And so, like I've been saying, in the second half of the game, after they've reset their deck, they've probably used a lot of their own cards. They don't have any more gas in the tank themselves, and the idea is hopefully the partner can take over. Now, this does come with some pretty severe weaknesses. Within their cards, they have no extra minion plays, and they don't have any specials. They have no way to manipulate the process of basis scoring. So if you have like a Shinobi or a Mega Troopers, they can come in after you've done your stuff and maybe swing the base and get some points for not as much effort. They also have no protection to help protect their engines, the Engineer, that wants to stay out as long as possible, but being a 3-power minion, it is quite vulnerable, and they don't have any way to protect it. They have also very limited solo potential. They have very limited removal. Their only removal card is Tavern Tussle, which requires you to give up some power as well. And so it's very hard for them to get solo scores. That means that if the opponent can hop on for second place, again like with a Shinobi, or even just with like a 2-power minion, which you're not going to want to take out with Tavern Tussle, that's going to be some very easy points for the opponent, and Brewers might have to expend more resources and burn themselves out quicker, which means that the opponent might be able to outlast them and slow them down. And so in the second half of the game, when Brewers are burnt out, their opponent can lazily come in and clean up the game. And that is a real weakness Brewers have. Additionally, their recursion is basically all or nothing. Like we said, Gangs All Here and Brewmaster are their only sources of recursion. And all of it, it gets back your whole discard pile, or it gives you nothing. And that can be really unwieldy if you haven't set up your deck properly. You might be forced to shuffle in a lot more cards than you want to do, which of course incentivizes you to box cards that you don't want instead of discarding them. But sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes it takes too much time. Sometimes you need the cards back now. And so their recursion can be quite unwieldy. But leaving that aside, let's round this out with some synergies, some, I think, very fun factions for them to partner with. Now, on their own, I think Brewers are quite strong due to their value propositions and their strengths rather than their weaknesses. I think they're comparable in value proposition and in strength to something like a Grannies with the Titan, or Wizards, or maybe sort of Killer Plants, although they don't have the extra minion plays. So these recommended partners we're seeing here are on the weaker end. Now we got Dinosaurs. They've got a mix of really, really good cards. You can see here King Rex, prime example. I've been mentioning that all video. Your Rampage, your Augmentations, etc. So Dinosaurs has some very good cards, but they also have some bad cards they don't mind boxing, so that you can play those good cards more often. Next up in the middle here, we have Minions of Cthulhu. This is specifically without the Titan. I know not using the Titans is sometimes a little controversial, and more so these days with print-on-demand stuff. I would not subject my opponents to Brewers plus Minions of Cthulhu with the Titan. And I think specifically Minions of Cthulhu without the Titan give an opportunity for a really cool interaction to shine, which is that if you box Madness cards, they don't hinder you anymore. And so if you draw a bunch of Madness with Minions of Cthulhu to fuel their strong abilities, Brewers can later box that Madness, and you don't have to pay the penalty. And this lubricates their wheels a ton. Even if they're not giving the Madness away, they know they'll have a safe way to dispose of it somehow. And then last on our list is Masters of Evil. Followers of our tier list videos know they are towards the bottom of the barrel strength-wise, but something that is very nice about Masters of Evil is that their strength curve is kind of the exact opposite of Brewers. Whereas Brewers are very strong early in the game, Masters of Evil are very strong late in the game. And so there's a very nice trade-off where you can play your Brewers stuff early on, burn through all of your cards that want to be boxed for those big plays. That lets you get a good head start in VP, hopefully. And then once you've burnt your Brewers out, Masters of Evil can come in and clean up shop with their cards. Their chip VP, their stronger minions when you have more VP. And so you end up with a smoother power curve throughout the entirety of the game. You can finish that marathon of a game instead of trying to sprint to the end. You're welcome to try more partners other than these if you play with Brewers. I think these are just some very nice suggestions. They go well with pretty much everything. Going back to that support label, you're not going to find much of a bad partner with Brewers, which I think is probably the reason they're so popular. All right, very last thing, where to play the Brewers. Like I've been saying, this is off of the Custom Factions Wiki, so there's a link to their page in the description. They also have an Imgur album, also linked in the description, that's also in the Custom Factions Wiki page. So you can go to either of those links in the description to play Brewers, download them for Tabletop Simulator. And we also have a French translation for all of our French speakers, graciously provided by Custom Wiki admin Golmote. He's done the incredible task of translating every faction on the Custom Factions Wiki into French. It's amazing work. I've heard he's done very well with them. But yeah, that's the Brewers. This is the end of the first episode of Custom Creations. I look forward to doing more of these in the future, and I know some of our other hosts are also looking forward to doing some editions of this of their own, so be on the lookout for that. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.